Hello, Patriots. Crazy Elk 99 coming at you. Starting a new segment on the channel called What's in Your Library or What's on Your Bookshelf. Still working on the title. Leave comments if you got some input. So I wanted to talk about a book I just finished reading. The book is called Unintended Consequences by the author by the name of John Ross. Now, a lot of you, or some of you, may be familiar with this book. It's kind of iconic, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to find this book. I'll speak to that before I speak to what the book's about. But you can find it on Amazon. You got to be careful because there's another book called Unintended Consequences, but it's not a John Ross novel. It's something else, and that's readily available. But on Amazon, it does list unintended consequences, but it doesn't sell new copies. And the used paper copies, which this is a paper copy, go from anywhere from $80 up to several hundred. And the hardbacks are into the several hundreds, $300-$500, which is ridiculous. You can find it directly from the publisher. It's published by Accurate Press. That's spelled just like you would think, accuratepress.net, N-E-T. And it's still not cheap. The book goes for $65. And that's mainly, I think, because of distribution. They just aren't a big distributor like some of the others. But as you can see, it is not a small book. It's over 800 pages, 850 some pages. And the print is not large. So there's a lot of content in this book. So the cover, well, I'll tell you about the cover in a minute because I'm going to read the bio. Well, that's what I was going to say. On Amazon, if you go to Amazon, I think Amazon doesn't support this book, even though you can buy used copies there. And the reason I say that is if you click on any of the links for the copies or whatever, there's not even a bio to tell you what the book's about. So I went to Wikipedia to pull up the official bio because frankly, I'm not really sure how to describe the book myself. It's a well-written book. The guy's first novel, first of all, John Ross's first novel, knocked it out of the park as far as that goes. He's I'm a big reader anyway. It's a well-written book, detail-oriented. The story is intriguing if you're not really into gun stuff. It's not really a book about guns, but it's got a lot of gun stuff in it, and I can't really explain. I know that probably doesn't make any sense, but it's very detail-oriented and it's well-written. It's very engaging, somewhat disturbing in some places. And so Wikipedia says, Unintended Consequences, a novel by John Ross, first published in 1996 by Accurate Press. The story chronicles the history of gun culture, gun rights, and gun control in the United States from the early 20th century through the late 1990s. Although clearly a work of fiction, the story is heavily laced with historical fact. That is a fact, including historical figures who play minor supporting roles. The propagandist is very active in competitive shooting sports, as is the author, so unusually detailed and intricate facts, figures, and explanations of firearms-related topics ornament the narrative and drive the plot. The cover has a picture of Lady Justice being assaulted by an ATF agent. So I don't know if you can get that on here, but obviously that's a disturbing image to pretty much anybody anyway. The book was listed by the New York Times Sunday Book Review as one of the most sought after out-of-print books of 2013. And it goes on to tell you a little bit about the background, and I'll read that too as well because it'll tell you a little more about what the book's about. It says the story hinges upon the enactment and subsequent unintended consequences of several important pieces of U.S. gun control legislation and regulation: the National Firearms Act of 1934, the Gun Control Act of 1968, the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986, the Assault Weapons Importation Ban enacted by Presidential Executive Order in 1889, and a Federal Assault Weapons Ban of 1994. Its thesis, as discussed in the author's note, a warning and disclaimer, in the beginning of the book is that enough bullying by what is widely perceived as a hostile occupation government will inevitably end in revolt if the occupied area is large enough and has a culture that is significantly different from the occupying state, and that this revolt will be undefeatable if the rebels use very low-tech, leaderless resistance. So that's apologies for having to read that, but that probably explains it better than I can. But what else I will tell you, it's a book about tyranny. That's what it boils down to. It's a book about government overreach, and not just the ATF. It goes into the overreach by other agencies as well. And it kind of sets the stage for a revolution on a low, numbers-wise, but very effective outcome. And again, it's somewhat disturbing. The book starts in the early 1920s or so, but it talks, the bio on Wikipedia even said historical facts, and it refers to stuff that has happened in this nation that I was completely oblivious to and unaware of, such to that I made a note as I was reading it and actually went and looked it up afterwards, and in fact it was true. These things they're talking about was true. Some of the stuff you're gonna have heard of, be the Waco, the ATF FBI debacle there, Ruby Ridge, it touches on those as well, but honestly it doesn't go into a lot of detail on those, I think because they're so widely known. But there are other instances as well that are not as well known. And although I think most of us, particularly those people that follow me and my content, will agree that we're aware of continual government overreach and oppression, but until you sit down and read something like this that puts it in chronological order as it builds, and you see how it gets worse and worse, I think it's sobering, it's disturbing, and it's something we just need to be aware of and not forget. So anyway, that's that. I highly recommend it. It is not cheap. I think I mentioned even on Accurate Press, where you can go and buy it directly from their website, it's $65. That's not cheap for a paperback, but it's a lot. It's the content of several books, really. So you might be able to find it in a library. I don't know. You might be able to find it in a used bookstore, although most used bookstores, I think, know what they have, so they'll price it accordingly. I'll say anybody local here that's interested in reading it, let me know, and you're welcome to borrow this copy. I'm hesitant. It's kind of like loaning out tools. You may never see them again, but if you're a friend of mine, I generally trust. So there's that. So that's what I just finished. Well, I didn't finish it last night, but I finished it last couple of weeks ago, and it took me a while because I'm not one of these people that'll sit down for 2 hours and read. I'll read 20, 30 minutes and then put it down, and I've got so many irons in the fire that it took me a while to get through this, but it was a good book, and I highly recommend it. So what I'm reading now, and just to give you a preview, is Lexington and Concord, the beginning of the War of the American Revolution. I'm actually not quite halfway through it already. It's a very interesting book, and we'll talk more about that in maybe an upcoming video. But it's already, I can tell you, it's much more than we learned in our history books when we were going through school. I'm not sure even to what degree they teach American history that far back and how far it goes. But let me know if you want to see some more stuff like this. I've got another couple of ideas of related. I'm watching a DVD series now that I've had for a while and just never got around to watching it. Probably do a little piece on it as well, and that would fall into what's on your bookshelf or what's in your library as well. Let me know what the title you think should be, and then the title of the video will be that title, the name of the book that we'll be talking about in the video. So thanks for your time, and I will probably be doing another video or two today because I'm way behind in stuff that I have that I want to do. And if you're seeing this, you're hopefully seeing this on Rumble instead of YouTube, because I'm getting away from YouTube, or at least I'm not going to rely on it anymore as my primary source. And I'll talk more about that in a separate video.